today's presentation will be about freehand. And remember the first week when we went over the course content, I did give you a brief introduction to freehand. And we talked about the importance of freehand. Especially civil and transportation students, when we come to the freehand exercise, they feel like we're not really artists and why are we doing this? So remember what I said. My objective is to give you tools that you can impress your future employer. So we're doing two things. We're learning, well, three things. We're learning things, obviously. Second one is we're building portfolio. So if you apply yourself to this, you will have your artistic drawing in your portfolio. And number three, we are trying to give you tools to succeed once you do get the job. So where would freehand come to play? The most important application is being able to convey something that's in your head. So let's say you are invited for the first time to a meeting because you have been hired to work on a project. Let's say you have a solution to a particular problem, a connection detail, something that you've seen done somewhere else. What I would like you to be able to do is quickly sketch it. If you get my job when I retire, you need to be able to sketch in front of people on the board. You see me doing it all the time. Those are all freehand lines. I'm not using rulers on the board, okay? During the meeting, you want to be able to sketch on a piece of paper. You want to be able to stand up to the meetings, brainstorming meetings usually have like a flip chart, and you grab a marker and you sketch something. In your real life, you will be conveying your ideas for your deck or your addition or renovation or furniture layout to your spouse when you buy a first house. And believe me, I can never see what my husband proposes. I have to use my very vivid imagination because this guy cannot draw, ever. On the other hand, when I sketch things for him, it looks awesome. So guess what? Everything that I proposed flies. And everything he proposed, well, we can't see. So don't underestimate the importance of freehand. Another scenario I'll give you is, let's say you're new on a job and the boss takes you out for dinner or lunch. Not dinner, maybe not. That's not professional, but lunch. And you're chatting. I want you to be able to sketch on a piece of paper. And it could be architectural office. It could be an idea for plan, solution, elevation, design. In civil, it could be a connection solution. Let's say a plate doesn't have enough room, the bolts are too big, and you find out with some welding solution or something. You sketch it, you convey idea, you get promoted because you're smart and you can sell your idea. So in a nutshell, that is the huge importance of it. Now, architectural students, if you know how to sketch, you will be able to get into the design stages of the project. And that's a very important part of the design process, because if you can sketch, you can get the more exciting design jobs versus just drafting on a computer. So what I'm going to show you is a scaled down version, because I know that civil transportation students hate this part until I convince them that anybody can learn this. So what I'm taking you through is a few slides from the semester of freehand sketching that I taught when I first started here, before we became one happy family of building construction groups that encompass the architectural, civil, transportation, and a whole bunch of other departments right now. So we're one big happy family, but before that marriage happened, we as an architectural technology actually had a freehand drawing semester. Oh my goodness. So what I'm showing you now is students' drawings, not my drawing. Those were students' drawings from that semester. And what we started with were boxes. So I would make a composition in front of the class, and I would set up boxes, and they would be purposely boxes that I would recognize. Like the main box would be, let's say, a perfect cube, because I will be trying to see whether students conveyed the cube on their drawing. It didn't matter where they were sitting, but the cube is a cube, and it should be a cube on a drawing. The other boxes were, let's say, Kleenex box or something else that I could easily recognize. So you would start from observing the composition and measuring proportions. So I'm going to give you freehand drawing lesson one-on-one. Let's all grab pencils. Just basic pencils. And for freehand drawing, actually the wooden pencils that I told you not to buy are actually better. So now what I'd like you to do is stretch your arm. Stretch your arm like this, so it's straight. And then remember last week we talked about closing one eye that we actually see flat. Okay? I want you to close one eye and measure something. Let's measure me. Let's measure my head. What else can we measure? Okay, let's measure proportions of our big screen. So you cover one eye, you stretch up your arm, and from where you're sitting, you can move your thumb along your pencil and just lay it over top, kind of see how many times does height fit into width from where you're sitting. And those proportions will be different for everybody. So, number one, we see 3D because we have two eyes, and we see slightly differently with one eye and the other. And then through the experience, we also learn about that depth since we're born. So basically, we're seeing 3D. But your drawing is going to be on a flat sheet of paper. So to help yourself out, if you cover one eye and you're looking at something new, you will be better seeing it flat, and that's how you should be conveying it on a paper. So just like with drafting techniques that I was teaching you, there are freehand techniques that are just tricks of the trade that can guarantee that anyone in this classroom can learn how to draw. Now, if you have an artistic ability, that's great because your observation will be better and your artistic expression will be better and you will be enjoying it more. But anyone can learn how to draw. I actually took 2 years of private lessons once a week. Because to get to university in Poland, education was free, but you had to secure your position. And as a young person, you had two options when there were 15 to 20 people for that spot. You were either very good or you took private lessons. If you really wanted to secure the position, you would try to be very good, you would try to have good marks, and then you took private lessons. And obviously the people who were selecting, they knew they had a good eye. They could tell the person that was talented anyway without training. So I think I had combination on both because I did very good with freehand. So one of the things that we were taught on those lessons to pass the exams were these techniques of flattening the screen, measuring proportions. There are two ways of measuring proportions with your pencil. So you move your thumb. Try this. It's pretty interesting. You move your thumb, you hold your pencil loosely, and basically you can either compare the proportions by turning your pencil up and down, whichever way you need, comparing proportions. The other technique is to measure a module. So for example, I'm recording, so I want to sit here. But a standing person in certain pose, the head would fit in standard person, the head fits 7 times in the body. 6 to 7 times, depending on the proportion. But now you can take that head as a module and see how many heads in shoulders, how many heads in hips. 2.5, 1.5. If the person is skinny, those proportions will be different than the person that's quite chubby. So two options. Let's summarize this. The second exercise that I will ask you to do, the live drawing, is going to be comparing proportions and comparing either with looking at width to height or looking at measuring a module and how many of those modules fit in whatever it is that you're measuring. Now the talented, extra talented person like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, they didn't have to measure any proportions, they just had a photographic eye. But the rest of us can help ourselves by covering one eye and using these two techniques. The other thing that happens with the boxes is the box is seen in perspective view. So we were talking about orthographic projections for flat construction drawing so far. We were looking at bird's view, which was flying above the structure, and we were looking at elevations, which was flattening everything and seeing only perpendicular items to our eyes. But where you're doing the live drawing, you're seeing three-dimensional cube, you're looking at three-dimensional objects, and you have to make them flat on your drawing. So that's another difficulty, where good observers will see these angles, and the person that's not a good observer, the person that's just starting freehand, would have to somehow figure it out. So how do we figure it out? Everybody has a pretty good ability of seeing vertical and horizontal, right? Okay? And if you don't see vertical and horizontal, you can always lay your pencil kind of flat and kind of see. Okay, so let's try that. You can kind of look, and especially if you cover one eye, now you can really see the difference. And if you hold your pencil kind of flat or perpendicular, then you can look at something else and establish the angles. So we don't have lots of things that are on an angle in this lab. But imagine that you're looking at boxes that are raised up high so everybody in the class can see. Then you'd have to establish how to draw this line, because now you're seeing two surfaces in what we refer to as perspective view with two vanishing points. So parallel lines. We know that box has parallel lines, and you know what that means. When we see items that are parallel in perspective view, they converge into one point, which we call vanishing point. And if you're looking at the edge of the box, you would have vanishing points in two directions. They will always, that's another trick, those vanishing points will always be at your eye level. Okay? So depending how you will look at the composition, at your eye level is where those vanishing points should happen. Okay? So now, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo didn't have to think about it. They knew where things converged photographically. But you and I can help ourselves by basically, if you place your pencil, you can kind of see, let's all do this. You can kind of see, if you were sitting in this room and wanting to draw anything in this room, a person, a computer, a composition in the middle, that's where your horizon is, at eye level. Meaning all of the lines that are parallel would converge to that vanishing point. Another trick to establish is, if you're looking at a box, are all the items in the box, all the edges of the box, below that horizon line or above horizon line? Now, in this scenario, I think the composition was very high, and the student was kind of looking at it where the bottom of the box was hanging off the table or something, and he could still see a little bit of it. So this line still goes down towards some kind of vanishing point. But this line needs to be sharper. And the vanishing point for this student would be somewhere here, because the person was sitting low and my composition was raised up so everybody in the class could see it. Okay? The next thing that I want you to practice today, no matter what you draw for me, remember how at the beginning I said we don't go over our drafted lines? For freehand drawing, I want you to go over lines, but continuous. In other words, we're recording it on a video, hopefully this will show. This is the kind of sketching we don't want. This is what lots of you did in high school, doodling during boring lectures, right? That's what I call doodle. So we don't want to doodle. We want long, continuous lines. Imagine 2 points that you want to connect. Let's say you want to connect this point and this point with nice, straight, vertical line. And because this is Xerox copy and then scan of a Xerox copy, the student kept the original. What's missing on this drawing is tons of light construction lines, just like in drafting. And if you want a straight line between these 2 points, the best thing to do is to draw that line longer. You have much better chance to go through the 2 points that you need straight if you go with a nice continuous line, right? So, what I'm going to ask you to do, you don't have to be artiste, but I will take points off if you doodle. because your instruction is to do straight, long lines. So what happens is we draw everything light, and as you fine-tune, if your line is not perfect, and by the way, we have the paper here. If we have the backup, you'd see it a little bit better. If you want to see line on an angle, whether you did get it straight, if you look at it, just like when we're buying lumber, if you look at it on an angle, on your horizon, you will see how they're doing. And if I had a nice backup, straight backup, I could actually fix it on my eye level, because all of the imperfections will be showing. So what we want to do is we want to draw lots of light lines over. So what should I see here is lots of straight, long lines, and the edge happens by applying more and more lines between these 2 points. Now think about it. When you look at the box, does box actually have an edge? Or are there rather 2 surfaces under different light conditions coming together? Which one? We don't have an edge. Everything that you're looking at that is 3-dimensional does not really have an edge. We're not having a thin wire box. We're having a solid cardboard box, and there is no edges. The edges are the 2 surfaces coming together. So what happens in freehand drawing should be, first of all, finished at any time. So during those entrance exams that I mentioned to you, the exam could be over in 8 hours, 2 hours, or 10 minutes. You never knew. So if you started to draw in detail this corner of the box, or this box for that matter, your drawing in 10 minutes would look really horrific. The drawing should be always looking good. Whether you've spent 10 minutes on it, 2 hours just means you're going to have much more detail. And you're going to create masterpiece. Maybe you'll ink it, maybe you'll watercolor it. Maybe you will define much more detail. But in 10 minutes, you should check your layout by comparing proportions, measuring proportions, and transferring the proportions of your compositions to the sheet of paper, and using one or the other technique. So what could happen here is maybe student used the height of this box as a module, and then it would go sideways and look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 modules is the entire box. Okay? Maybe student used this height and went 1, 2, 3, 4 modules is the height. Okay? The better you measure proportions, the better you're going to get the correct proportions on your paper. So that's in a nutshell what we did in week number 1. Week number 2 or 3, we would progress into more complicated stuff. So what is new here? And that's a very, very important drawing. Although many years have passed, probably 22 years since this drawing was made, there are certain things that are still quite recognizable. What is this object, ladies and gentlemen? It's a bucket. All right, this student did a phenomenal job. If 22 years later we can tell that this is a bucket. Now, these planters used to be the white plastic planters. You can still see them here and there. They've been replaced with plastic urns now. They're much more sophisticated. But 22 years ago, everybody knew this stuff. Every household had these kind of plastic planters. There was a can of paint. There was a pot, planting pot, and you probably don't recognize this as much anymore unless you travel to States. Do you know what this is? Milk jug. A gallon milk jug. We now in Canada have a fabulous system of those bags. Even though they break every now and then, it still cuts meow. It's much more environmentally friendly than United States that I have these gallon containers that, you know, we go through a lot. So this is pretty cool. Look how much you've been able to recognize. And that's what you want to aim for. To measure proportions, to study the composition and draw it as correctly as you can so the person looking at your drawing can see it. Now, you practice the live composition so that you can better convey your ideas from your head. Okay? Now there is something else that's new on this drawing, and that's ellipses. Somebody is buzzing. Guys, you're going to mess up my video. Shh. Never mind my voice too. I can't speak too loud, guys. I still have issues. I hear female buzzing voice. Can we please stop the buzzing? Whoever's sitting next to that female, can you shake her? All right, stop now. Okay, so ellipses. The ellipse is nothing other than circle in perspective view. So if we had a whole semester, we would practice this a lot. And under content of this freehand module, there is a construction of ellipse, precise construction of ellipse. It's a little bit tricky, but for today's exercise, if you have to draw the ellipse, what we want to draw is the box and divide it by half and half. So we have the center of ellipse. So we have 4 most important points. And then, ladies and gentlemen, what we want to do is we want to draw, look at the screen. We want to go over and over and over and keep making the ellipse better and better. So it's not one crude, hard, ugly line. It's going freehand with your pencil through those points, and every time fine-tuning so your ellipse goes through those 4 crucial points. And if you have the box drawn, box and halfway points, then visually you can look at each quadrant and kind of eyeball what is happening to the proportions of your ellipse. So again, I'm showing you students' drawings because they're quite impressive. And of course, not everybody did this fabulous job. But these drawings, because they're student drawings, don't have as many lines as I'd like you to practice to have. Okay, from this we're progressing into something very, very interesting. Shoes. Let's have a look at shoes. I'll show you my shoe. The shoe is very difficult to draw, so it's a great practice. So for your home exercise, if you want to draw your sneakers, are on for it. Sneakers are very difficult to draw. Let's look at the sole of our shoe. First of all, shoe is a 3-dimensional object. I'm actually going to take it off because I want it on a video too. Okay, how would we draw the shoe? If you're looking at it like this in elevation view, you would need to measure proportions, height to width, and you should start from rectangular box, correct? Rectangular box. And then given the time, you would start measuring proportions and shapes and start introducing the ellipses and curves to actually get the sole looking like a sole of the shoe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, most of the time when you draw a shoe, you will not be seeing just the sole. You will be seeing person wearing it in whichever direction, right? Okay, if you're drawing this shoe, in order for shoe to look correct, you will have to draw a rectangular box in whichever angle you're seeing it, in perspective, and still create ellipses and create the volume of the shoe, 3D, starting from perspective view of the rectangular box of the sole. So imagine how difficult that proposition is, okay? So that's why, because it's difficult, it's a fantastic exercise. So for this exercise here, we still have the cube box, but now we're working with textures of shoes. The shoes can be smooth leather. They can be rough sneakers with lots of color, lots of design, the fabric, the leather, etc. We practice landscape features by drawing plants. Smaller version. There are ellipses of the pot, and the last in this composition are fabrics. Because practicing how to draw fabrics lets you represent materials for your drawing in the future. So how do you show slick translucent grass? How you show rough brick or smooth brick? How you show dark brick versus light brick or multicolored brick? Okay? The exercises for that is picking up a smooth shirt versus a soft, droopy sweater. So that's what we did here. There was a shirt, and there was a soft droopy sweater, and a couple of other shoes and other things. And we practice number of things that we've already learned here. So there is composition, there is layout, there's proportions, there is cube in perspective view, there are textures and fabrics. And fabrics, you would look at the whole volume of the fabric, and you would measure proportion and box it out. Then you would cover one eye and you would break the lines of the creases of the fabric. Now if the fabric is very soft, you would try to round the corners of the creases because it's a soft wool sweater. But if it's a stiff shirt with a very stiff collar, you would have very sharp edges, and you would do exactly the same thing as you did with the box. The edges are much sharper. But again, there is no lines in the shirt. They're just creases, and the creases are two surfaces coming together. So the trick is not to draw one finished dark line, but many light lines that later on can be rendered. So what you see here happening is what we refer to as render. Rendering this drawing conveys the depth by making things darker and lighter. So you have a play of not only different fabrics and materials, but also light and shadow. And shadow can make things pop on a drawing by introducing the third dimension. Okay, so that's a new term called rendering. Now, the last thing towards the end of the semester in the freehand part would be a person. So now, why do we draw a person? This is the most difficult thing to draw. Because if you draw this person incorrectly, it's not going to look like a human being, right? So, this was done 22 years ago. What can we tell about this? First of all, is it a boy or girl? Sometimes with long hair you can't tell, but can we tell? Jeans, pants? What is it? What do you think? Man or woman? Young man or young woman?
Girl.
Girl. It's a woman. Young woman. Okay? What kind of hair? Blonde? Dark. I would say dark. Short or long? How old is she? Is she middle-aged like me, or is she cute and young? 27 and a half. That's right. She's one of the students. She was actually a girlfriend of one of the students in class that came in and posed for us for 3 hours. So as she sat there, we were doing exactly the same thing. Measure proportions. Maybe in this case, you would measure the height. How many heads in the whole composition? How many heads in her hips? How many heads in her shoulders will be the proportions of her. Now, is she a good-looking chick with a nice lean body on her, or is she a little bit overweight? What do you think? Overweight? Come on. This is 2014 and you think she's overweight? I think she's just perfect. What is she wearing?
Prison suit.
Prison suit. What kind of pants are these? Jeans.
Yoga pants, for sure.
No, they're jeans. They have a zipper here. What kind of boots? Huh? Tugs? Tugs? They're called tugs? I don't know what tugs are. That's your lingo. They're ugly boots, but back then the fashionable were cowboy boots. I don't think they ever went out of fashion. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not lying to you. This is my student, because this is another student. This is another student drawing exactly the same young lady. So these are not my drawings. These are students that were well trained. Not bad, eh? Of course, not everybody got it that well. But we have two pretty good drawings. I'm going to go back to this one because one suggestion, if you're really ambitious, and for that freehand drawing, if you want to sit your boyfriend, girlfriend at home and feel artistic and try to draw a person, sit them this way. Sit them sideways. Because now you're drawing cylinder of a leg and the rest of everything sideways. It's much easier to measure proportions and to draw a person from the profile view. The face, the whole thing is much easier. So now let's have a look. Why is it more difficult from this angle? So never sit up front and draw a person flat like that. Why? Because you're looking at the face You have to show nose and three-dimensional head. Shh. Three-dimensional head. And more importantly, look at this part here, the legs. There are two cylinders in perspective view going away from you, and to draw that part of the body from this vantage point is very, very difficult. So I would say this is advanced stuff. Leave it for later. Okay, so the most difficult in any art classes or freehand drawing classes is a person. And in real life, you would really do the final project nude. Why nude? Well, obviously because we are always impressed with the naked human body. But imagine drawing her was difficult. But she has curly hair, which are easy to draw. If you were to draw my hair today, slicked back, it's very difficult, because how do you show a round head on a flat sheet of paper when there is nothing to grab? When there's busy hair, or like your hair drooping down nicely, with curves and the lines of the hair, you can make the head look round. You're wearing a hat, ellipse of the hat would imply third dimension. But slick hair back or handkerchief is very difficult. So for the same reason, a person wearing stiff shirt or soft sweater or jeans and boots, it's much easier to draw than beautiful young female with not a wrinkle on her body. Just beautiful curves, because how do you make that person three-dimensional without rendering the body black and looking like she's growing hair? So drawing the curves and smoothness without any edges and showing third dimension of a human skin is very, very difficult. So that's why almost all art classes will finish freehand drawing with the nude, boy or girl. The entrance exams would have the person without any wrinkles. Imagine drawing an old face with lots of wrinkles. At least you've got something to grab on. Okay? Beard, stiff hair. You know, some of the hairdos back then, there was a guy who had like a flat cylinder on his hair, you know, that stiff African flat top. That was easy to draw. But the nude person wearing black stockings and a black handkerchief on their head, which is what I had on my freehand exam, is very difficult to draw. And if you start from black stockings and 10 minutes later they want to collect your sheets, you're wrong. So how would you even start drawing a person? You would you would measure proportions. You would start from lines, and lots of lines. Measuring proportions, meaning the head is a line, proportioned, shoulders is a line, and sometimes when the person is standing with weight on one leg, like look at me right now, if the person is posing like this, which often they do when they stand for 3 hours, then there is a definite hip line with an angle, definite shoulder line with an angle. If the person has a tilted head, then all the face features are on an angle. Now, when you're drawing a face, the head is an ellipse, and you can locate the eye ellipse, nose ellipse, whichever way you're looking at the person. So you would start from drawing the ellipse. Where's my magic pencil? Ellipse for the head. There would be another ellipse establishing within my yo-yo shape the line that connects the forehead, eyebrows, forehead, nose, lips. They have to be in line or the person is not going to look like a human being. The eye level. If your ellipse is, if I'm looking up, the ellipse for eyes will be going down, correct? If I'm looking down, the ellipse for eyes will be doing this within the yo-yo. So I'll sketch some of those things on the blackboard later on. Okay, enough said. So you can try any of these at home. You can make a composition of boxes, and I'll show you what you can draw at Mohawk College. Now, the other exercise that we did that was lots of fun in that semester was we actually went to Mohawk Road. There is a Mohawk old schoolhouse on Mohawk Road, not far from here, just off West 5th going towards Garth. There's an old school building like this. Yes?
It's gone.
No.
They moved it.
They picked it up.
And moved it. Oh no.
Well, yeah, I have a picture of it. They had it down.
Oh, you're kidding. Send me pictures. We'll add it. That would be awesome. Oh my goodness. Oh, it's a shame. I know that they put in additions. There was some daycare there. When we were sketching this, we were actually able to go inside and to see how, you know, little kids used to go to school. So it's a shame, but okay, so it's moved. We would stand there, literally stand there across the street and on the side, and we would sketch. Now that we were all great with freehand sketching and measuring proportions, this is a student drawing that on 11 by 17 sketched the orthographic projection, the two elevations, because the objective of this exercise was to imagine that we need to somehow measure this existing church, schoolhouse, and draw it in the lab to allow architects, let's say, do renovation drawings or move it or add addition to it. So what we would do is we would actually stand there, and obviously nobody went up the roof to measure proportions of the tower. We would make notes comparing the tower to something that we could measure, like doors, the width of the doors. There were students who measured 10 bricks and took a note of how much in real life is 10 bricks. And they would make a note and then compare the 10 brick measurement, let's say the height of this window, let's say that's 50 bricks, compare it to the height of the tower. So it's all measuring with pencil proportions. Basically, today you would take pictures and making notes, but still you can't really take notes on the picture. So when you have a freehand sketch, you can make those notes, come back to the office, in our case a classroom, and from our sketch and notes, students produced what is a drafted drawing that now can be used with overlay of vellum to do the addition, changes, renovations, etc., and noted and made into a construction drawing. Okay? So that's another great application. Now I'll tell you how to cheat. What's the 9th? Oh yeah. The very, very last, now that's not a student, that was me teaching the class. The very last thing that we did learn in that freehand class was to construct perspective. This kind of drawing is possible using science of projection, and you can make your perspective as big or as small as you want. I have a book, if you're interested, by Hall, and it's Hall little book, the whole book by Hall, that teaches you how to establish the most crucial points in your perspective. But in the end, you would not use that technique of, you work with the plan and elevations, and you project information from where you want to look at your object. You project it to a picture plane, and then you drop it down and use the elevation to get heights. So it's a relatively simple scientific solution of how to get perfect proportions for your perspective. But in architectural office, like in this sketch, you would not be measuring details for the boxes and the soffits and the little circle here. You would just construct it freehand or construct it with your drafting tools. So lots of these elements that you see are constructed overall with regards to perspective, but then the details of flower boxes, pots, and siding, they just follow the science. The lines for siding keep going, converging into the same vanishing point. So that was the end of that semester, and some of the things are posted on our web page. So what are we going to do, ladies and gentlemen? I don't want to close everything, I just want to close. Better be safe than sorry, we might be coming back to it. So we are in table of contents under freehand. You have ellipse construction that I mentioned. You have angle lines and circles, cylinder in perspective. You have iso church drawing that we're going to do right now by me. And you have circle arc construction. You have freehand composition in lab photograph. So I'll show you quickly. You could potentially use this and draw from a picture, which is a little bit easier to do. So this was a composition one of the years that we did in lab, where we had ellipses, right? We had a recycling bucket, we had a box. It was before Christmas, so we had a little Christmas tree, and we had a plastic shiny bag, garbage bag, hanging on the side. You have that picture in your content, because I know on the screen, because I've got all the lights, you can't see 100%. But if you're not sure for that second drawing from the live composition, then you can set something up like this at home. Or if you really want to look a professional, you can use the tray or plywood sheet or Bainbridge board, and you can take the 11 by 17, and you can take it to, you know, the glass solarium in I-Wing on the main level, where there is a big door going towards the big smoking area towards Fennel. Do you know which area I'm talking about? So imagine you're taking the bridge to I-Wing, you're taking stairs down. At the very end of that area that faces our college green right now, at the very end, is a sculpture on the wall. And it's a beautiful steel sculpture that used to be in the courtyard. And then it lay in a basement rotting. And when we were doing recent renovations, somebody made a smart call, dug out that sculpture, and hang it on that wall. So now it's protected from the outside environment. If you want an easy thing to draw, that sculpture is easy, because it's so wishy-washy. It's students climbing to the top. They're having books, and they're having roll of sketch paper, and they're climbing to get their education. It's a great, great sculpture, but because it's a sculpture, you can be a little bit more expressive and artistic with it. Lots of lines, lots of shadows, and it could be easier than some of the other examples that I'm showing you. So I think that with this presentation, now we have 2 hours. It'll probably take us the next couple of hours to do the first component. So that second one, I will ask you to just try to be artiste for half an hour anytime, either today when you finish with the first one, that sculpture, or make a composition like I'm showing you right now. Simpler, more difficult, or ask a person to sit for you. Anything that I just showed you, just give it a go. You will be only evaluated on doing the project and following the motions that I asked you to do, which is straight lines, continuous ellipses, none of this jagged, what did I call it, doodling, okay? And then you're going to be fine. I just want you to have fun with it, so don't stress over it. Everybody will be doing totally different things. And then next week we can have exhibition. And if you want to bring some of the stuff that maybe you've done in high school, doodling, lots of you are doing the cartoon, not cartoon, more like graffiti style sketches. Bring it, we can have a look at it, and I can give you suggestions what you could use for your portfolio. Okay. So last but not least, what is it that we're actually going to do? So if we go back to content in freehand, there is a church drawing that I have done, and it's relatively quickly. It doesn't have to be church, actually. Notice that I have a freehand title block, freehand text. We have this drawing in the book. So let's all go to our text. I will put in calendar the page. What page number is this? 4849. So let's take which one is, and then you have this drawing actually on page 50. So you have this sketch, or maybe even better sketch, in your text, and that's what we're aiming for. Now, the starting drawing is also posted, so let's have a look at freehand study presentation, freehand sketching assignments. So if I download this, of course you have notes. Hopefully I covered it all, but if not, it's always a good idea to read the preliminary, the introduction to your project. So that my pages might be slightly different. It's still loading. Okay, So what we're going to draw, I'll make it a bit smaller. Let's make it 125. Let's make it 100 so you can see that composition on a paper is also very important. So that's the page in your book. What we're looking at is 3D objects, and I'm going to teach you something else. We did talk about horizon and perspective. So that's the way we see. We see parallel lines conveying. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure you've seen the drawing or painting or photograph of railway tracks. The horizon is where the sun sets. And the railway tracks are going to that sunset, and we know that they are parallel lines. I mean, the train is not going to a point, the wheels are not going to turn, but that's the way we see it. We see parallel lines converging in actual one point. There is one point perspective. If you're standing in the room, the walls that you're looking at would be converging in one point perspective. When you're looking at composition and boxes or buildings on the street, you're looking at two-point perspective. What you're looking at in this example is yet another 3D tool that we use in drafting and drawing, and it's called isometric view. In isometric view, we have an edge and we have two surfaces, but they are not converging. They are parallel. And they are about 30-degree angle on both sides. The angles could change, but the isometric view, there's two types. What we're looking at is isometric view where two sides of this composition are not converging. All of the lines are parallel. So your assignment, the first one that we're going to do in lab, will be about drawing parallel lines. And there's lots of parallel lines, so they should not be opening at the end. They should not be closing. They should be all parallel. So it's a composition, but what I want you to do first is draw a cube. So if you forget the dark lines, which are the final drawing, I want you to start with a cube. You see what my hand on the drawing is going through? A cube. So we're going to draw vertical line and lines on about 30-degree angle, close them off, and draw a cube. I'm going to leave the screen and I'm going to show it to you on board. So that's not going to be in your video. We're going to start from the vertical line, eyeball about 30-degree line, and notice that I'm not doing the lines only at the spot where I need them. I am actually extending all the lines. The next line is parallel, meaning this and this is parallel. Then I'm drawing lines to the other side. And now the most difficult part. The most difficult part will be, oops, I've converged them a bit. So that's not a problem. I'm just going to draw another line. Now the difficult part will be, where do I draw the other vertical line to make it a cube? Here? Is it a cube? What do I have to do? In or out? Out. So that's exactly what I'm going to ask you to do. To decide where this last line goes so it looks like a cube. Okay? Once it looks almost like a cube, then you've got to finish. Parallel line going from this edge and parallel line going from this edge. Then you can look at your drawing from the distance, and if I walk away from the blackboard, hey, that's pretty good, isn't it? That's what you want to start with. So when I evaluate this exercise, the very first thing I will look for is the cube. If you don't have a cube, point off. No matter what masterpiece you have, because I want you to try to eyeball the cube. So let's go over it again. Line on an angle, parallel lines in the other direction. I'm stepping back, they're parallel, cute. Now eyeball where this line needs to be, and if you make a mistake, just fix it until you're happy with this side looking like a cube. Then we're going to finish from the top. Now the next component of this exercise, once you have a cube, everything else is set, because this whole composition is based on that cube. But it is based on the cube by dividing it into halves and halves like so. Now you have 4 by 4 module divisions, so each side here is then divided with simple parallel lines, and you start with center, and then divide it again and again, eyeballing. Eyeballing, so all of these dimensions are the same. And then you have a cube that you can use to locate the crucial points. Everything else is just copying proportions. This is how Leonardo da Vinci did Sistine Chapel. He was painting that close. Huge painting. He had to have small paintings and project information of crucial points to the big surface, because he worked with like oil lamps where the face was this big and you're painting like this. So he would paint small paintings. That's why art galleries have small paintings that artists did first, and then they would project proportions to the big painting and then concentrate on details. So that's exactly the technique that we're doing. So we're going to now take this as a line, then we go 3 up, okay? So now you're ready to darken this line and go 3 up, and that will be the beginning of our wall. Then in the back it goes into 2, and then something happens in halfway through the cube. Then it goes up into a tower. So what I need you to do is to then start filling in, and then it goes up into roof. Parallel lines, and looking at proportions of the composition based on our cube being divided into squares on each surface. Now, once you have these lines, then you can have fun. Now, this is AutoCAD created, so that's one thing that students always do, and it looks really, really messy, because this is 3D drawing on AutoCAD. What we really want is the surface treatment. This is actually student drawing, not mine. So the one online that I gave you is mine. This one is actually, I think, student drawing, where notice how the surface is treated. So I am not going to make the rendering mandatory, because many of you, I want you to do it as a line practice. Many of you who have never done any drawing very often ruin the drawing with this rendering. But you can really jazz up and show the surface of the cylinder by putting more lines towards the edge. There is no edge, correct? Towards the part of the cylinder that you would see as an edge, and you want to imply that there is no edge, that the cylinder keeps going beyond. So how do we do this? Notice that I will be looking for locating of that ellipse. So we want to see the ellipses, and actually the drawing that I was looking at is starting with, this is not the side, this is the side, yeah, this is the side that we're drawing. So my sketch started from the other one. I'm not asking you to do 2, you're welcome to do 2, everybody's welcome to do more than required. But this one, so what page is this drawing? I'll put that in calendar. 49. So I'm going to quickly go to calendar, and I already noted that we're doing freehand today. Finish deck, freehand 1. I'm going to edit it quickly and say that we are doing, oh please tell me again, 49. ISO drawing of a building. Now notice that some people then make it a church, some people put windows. You feel free to make some changes to have fun, but geometrical components are what I'm after. Some people add railings and stairs to make it look more like a temple. I don't care what temple, I don't care what kind of building, as long as you have the composition of these geometrical figures. And just to finish off with some of the entrance exams for art schools, one of the exams that I had with regards to drawing like this was, we were given, let's say, you had to make a composition that would look like a structure, and you would have to use, let's say, 10 cubes, 5 cylinders, 3 cones, and 50 spheres. So what do you do with 50 spheres? You make like a ball lights along stick lamp posts, right? So you had to use your imagination on creating a composition that resembled a building or a streetscape using certain amount of geometrical shapes. Okay, so that's yet another practice that potentially you could do. So we're going to drawing of the building, and we're going to draw cube first, large on 11 by 17 sheet. Draw long. Am I writing it correctly? Continuous lines, and construct all ellipses. Shading is to be light and continuous lines only. Meaning, what students often do is, some of you who are self-taught in drawing, you like to smudge pencil with your finger. That is a no-no in this kind of artwork. The train, freehand line, everything is freehand, and none of it is smudged. Okay, so we're picking up 11 by 17 sheet. Now will be a good time to have a coffee. I know I'm due for one. And if there's any more deck drawings, they're coming in. And after break, I will feed the marks into the system, and you can pick up your midterms. Thank you very much for cooperating.